Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're having a great week. Today, we're going to talk about the Center of Excellence a little bit more. We're going to dive into some of the management tools that you have as a maker and as an admin to manage those apps and flows. So let's dive in. Okay, so we're going to jump into our COE environment. And we're going to look at our list of apps here. And first, I'm going to jump into the Admin Command Center. The Admin Command Center app is kind of your one-stop shop for your admins and your COE to manage all of the different apps for your COE, what the toolkit includes. And it gives you a bunch of other resources to help troubleshoot things, to manage your COE environment to make sure everything is healthy, and even see what the latest releases are for your Power Platform tenant. So let's jump in. So I've got the Admin Command Center pulled up here. The first thing it brings me to is my bookmarks. Now, the bookmarks will show all of the different admin apps that your admins can use that are part of the COE toolkit. And they even have them categorized. So they show you all of them right off the bat in the all solution areas. But they also show you the environment request apps. They show you the nurture apps, so the apps that are going to help to enable your makers in your organization. And it shows you the inventory apps, so the apps that will help you keep track of all of your flows and apps within your Power Platform tenant. The next thing that you'll see is the sync flow errors. So what this is doing is actually showing what errors are popping up in your COE environment. So what flows have errors that you need to fix. So I can see that I have one flow here that has an error, and I can click on this and I can actually see what's going on, why it's erroring out, and fix that. The next area of interest is the COE flows. So it's loading right now because it's loading all of the different COE flows that are included with the COE toolkit. There's a lot of flows that go on behind the scenes that help populate all of this data, that monitor your Power Platform tenant and actually send notifications out to your makers to make sure that they're in compliance, or that if they're notified that their app maybe hasn't been used in a while and maybe it should be cleaned up, or if there's an orphan app out there from somebody who's left. Tons of different flows, and I suggest you kind of take a look at all the different flows that are in there to see what they do and what's kind of happening in your COE environment. So this gives you a nice long list of all of them, and you're able to access them from here. You're able to see when it was last run, what solution it's part of in the COE toolkit. So you've got the nurture solution, core, governance. And you can see the solution area that it's part of to help categorize these flows. You can see the state if it's on or off, so maybe that could be alarming. You see one that should be on that's turned off, well, you can turn that on from here. And then you can go through each of the categories that these flows have been categorized as. Instead of just seeing the long list, you can actually go through each of these here and see each of the flow, what flows are in each category. So pretty cool stuff. The next one I want to talk about is the customized emails. So there are emails that go out as part of the COE toolkit to help notify your makers of certain instances. If maybe they, like I mentioned, their app is hasn't been used in a while and maybe it should be cleaned up. Welcome emails, etc. And you can customize those emails here in the command center and see what kind of the verbiage is and everything, and if you want to tweak those a little bit. So cool stuff here. The next one is all of your environment variables in your COE toolkit. So there's a bunch that you filled out when you set up the COE toolkit, and you can see what all of those values are here. And you can update them, and you can even see which ones that haven't been configured yet. Maybe you do want to configure, come back and configure if you didn't configure it at the beginning. So really powerful stuff here for your COE admins to kind of be able to look at all of your environment variables in one place, along with a bunch of other things. And then COE support. So your admins, if they have any questions or anything, or need a refresher on the COE, there is a bunch of documentation that's included with the admin command center as kind of, again, a one-stop shop for your admins to make sure they're up to date and kind of remember how to operate some of these things in the COE toolkit. It's also going to tell you exactly which COE you are on and what the latest release is in the COE toolkit. So you can kind of see if you're up to date or not. And then you've got a bunch of news. So a lot of cool resources here to stay up to date with Power Platform news. Again, a one-stop shop for your admins to really keep track of not only your environment and what's going on in it and making sure it's healthy, but also what's going on outside of Power Platform. What's up and coming? What are some learning paths that your admins can take, or even makers can take, that you can recommend? A lot of really useful stuff here for your admins. And again, it's called Command Center for a reason, because I think it's kind of the one-stop shop here to manage your Power Platform tenant. Okay, so the Admin Command Center, to wrap this up, is super useful. It's a one-stop shop for your admins. You can see all of your admin apps in your bookmarks. You can see the health of your COE to make sure that you have no errors. And if you do have errors, to take action on those errors. You can see all of the latest news in Power Platform, and you can stay up to date on what's up and coming. And you can even see COE documentation and stay up to date on, what are some of the new features in COE, and even if you need a refresher on what the COE toolkit does and all the different features in it. Okay, so the next step I want to cover is the admin view, which is kind of the inventory of everything happening in your Power Platform tenant. So let's go hop in there. So I'm in the Power Platform admin view. And in this view, you can see your top app makers, your top flow makers, your most active environments, and you can get a list of all of the different apps and flows within the environment and which ones have been used most recently. So kind of just a little snapshot of your Power Platform tenant. And then on the side, you'll see a list of all the different resources and tools that you can use within Power Platform, and an inventory of each of those tools and resources. And not just inventory, you can actually go deep into these apps, flows, environments, and get details of each of these right here inside of this app. So this really gives you a complete picture of your Power Platform tenant. Now, if you watched one of my previous videos on the COE dashboard, it's kind of similar to that. We get a complete view of what's going on. Instead of using visuals and whatnot, it's utilizing a model-driven app to show you all of the different flows, apps, environments, bots, connectors, everything here. And you can actually interact with them and get a little more detail than the COE dashboard that I covered earlier. Now, I'm not going to dive too deep into this because it would take a while to go through each of these, but you can kind of see from just clicking around a little bit the breadth of this view. So you really get a full picture of everything that's going on here and some good detail on all of this. You can also see the requests for new environments in this admin view. So you can actually answer some of these requests for new environments. And then you can get some detail on some of the users within your Power Platform tenant. So the Power Platform admin view is a great tool for your admins and your COE to use to keep track of kind of the inventory inside of your Power Platform tenant. And you can get a lot of great detail of all the different resources that are being built inside of your Power Platform tenant. And you can get some good detail on the makers and what they're doing, who your top makers, and kind of dive in to help them out and make sure that you're enabling those makers. Okay, so there's one more app that I want to cover, and that's the Developer Compliance Center. And this is really meant for makers, but also admins. It helps them collaborate and make sure that your apps and flows are staying compliant inside of your Power Platform tenant. So those guidelines and rules and everything that your COE is creating, we want to make sure that those are getting enforced and that your makers know when something is not compliant and that they need to fix it. So I'm in my Developer and Compliance Center app. We will see all apps that we have access to view when we come to the Developer Compliance Center. So if you're a maker, you're only going to see apps that you've created or that you have access to use. And if you're an admin, you'll see all the different apps here and you can check which ones are compliant. You'll see a few different types of tools that you can create within Power Platform. Your Canvas apps, model-driven apps, SharePoint form apps, flows, chatbots, custom connectors, desktop flows. These are all things that your makers can create. And we want to make sure that these things are in compliance with some of the rules and guidelines that your COE has created. So how do we do that? The Compliance Center is going to help you collaborate with your makers and make sure that they know when something's not compliant. So you'll see a big red circle here if something is not compliant with some of your guidelines that you have established in your COE environment. So if I click on this app, you'll see there are 3 things that are not compliant with this app. We have these red dots here that kind of notate that. So we didn't add enough detail, we didn't add an app description, and it hasn't been published within 60 days. So when we click on an app, we can see a few different things here. We get some details about the app, and this goes for any of the different tools that you can create within Power Platform. I'm focusing on apps right now. You can see the app settings, you can republish for a user, you can launch the app just to check it out and see what the app is all about. You can email the users if you're an admin and maybe something hasn't been updated for a while or they're not fixing the issues that that are out of compliance. You can delete the app if you have talked to the user or if that user has left and you know that this app isn't used anymore. And you can even assign a new owner from here. So a lot of powerful tools inside of this Developer Compliance Center for admins and for makers. So makers can come in here and actually fill out some of these details to help support their need for the app or help categorize this app. And we can also view app permissions and connections down here as well. So the Developer Compliance Center, a really, really useful tool in the COE toolkit for your admins and your makers alike to collaborate and make sure that you're keeping your data safe and making sure that your apps and all the different things that are getting built inside your Power Platform are compliant, and to make sure that your Power Platform tenant is staying clean and maintained.